Namo Buddhaya. Welcome to today's Sutta study. So a great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, appeared into this world. And when the Supreme Buddha taught the Dhamma, it transformed people. In one of the suttas, the Supreme Buddha teaches, when a Buddha appears into the world and teaches the Dhamma, and when people listens to the Dhamma, people who were completely indulged in ignorance, people who have been completely covered by ignorance, they are able to break that shell of ignorance and come out and see the light of wisdom, see reality. That is one marvel that happens because of the appearance of a Buddha. And then the Supreme Buddha teaches those people who are indulging in sensual pleasures, when they get to hear the Dhamma, what happens is they realize the futility of sensual pleasures, and they let go of sensual pleasures and they go in the path to Nibbana. That's another marvel that happens because of appearance of a Buddha. And then the Supreme Buddha teaches people who are completely filled with egoism, or people who have a very high ego, when they get to hear the Supreme Buddha's teaching, they learn the danger of they learn the danger of ego, and they let go of that ego, and they go in the path to becoming free from that ego forever, that is reaching Nibbana. So when a person gets to listen to the Dhamma, there's a transformation in that person. And that transformation was done by nothing else but this Dhamma. So when you're listening to the Dhamma, if you find that your life is also transforming, that means that your life is changing, then that means that this Dhamma is actually penetrating into your heart and it's becoming part of your life. Or if what you do is just simply listen and you don't see any change within your life, then that shows that this Dhamma is really not penetrating into your life, into your heart. Okay, so today we're actually going to learn a sutta which very clearly shows us how a person can be completely transformed by listening to the Dhamma, and how a person can completely be changed when a person gets to listen to this Dhamma. Okay, so you can really form a pleasant mind about the Supreme Buddha's Sangha. The Sangha is a prime example of those who have transformed their life because of the Dhamma. Okay, so today we're going to learn about an Arahant and how he changed, how the Dhamma transformed his life. Okay, this sutta is found in the Majjhima Nikaya of the Pali Canon, and the name of this sutta is Rattapala Sutta. Okay, I will share the link with you so that you can. Okay. So this is a bit of a long sutta, so I'm going to kind of summarize it and focus on certain parts of the sutta which are very important for us to understand, and for us to understand how a person becomes transformed. Okay, so in this sutta, really what happens is our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, please keep your mics muted so that it doesn't disturb those who are listening. So during this time, our great teacher, the Supreme Buddha, was living in the Kuru country with a large number of Sangha, and the Supreme Buddha eventually arrived at a town named Thullakottita. Okay, so when the Supreme Buddha comes to a town, people get the opportunity to offer dana, and people get the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. And then again, from there on, the Supreme Buddha continues on tour to another city. That's the way the Dhamma was spread during Supreme Buddha's time. So when the Supreme Buddha came to the city of Thullakottita, many people there came to listen to the Dhamma. And out of those people, there was one young man who, after listening to the Dhamma, realized, understood this Dhamma to a certain extent. And he thought, it's not easy to practice this Dhamma living at home. And this young man's name was Rattapala. Rattapala meaning he was one of the richest people in that entire town. Okay, so he thought, living the lay life, it's very difficult to practice this Dhamma, so I should become ordained. So he straight away went to the Supreme Buddha and asked for ordination. And the Supreme Buddha asked, do you have your parents' permission? And by that time, he had not, even told his parents about his idea of becoming ordained. So he said no. And so the Supreme Buddha asked, Buddhas do not ordain unless you have permission from your parents. So go and take permission from your parents. So he went back to his home and he told his parents that he wants to become ordained, and the parents completely refused his ordination. And they said, even by death, we don't want to be separated from you. We love you so much. You're our only son. We don't want to let you go. Okay, so no matter how much he asked, he did not get permission. And therefore, he decided that he's going to stop eating and he's going to die if he can't become ordained. So that is the way. So at the end, because the parents realized that if they don't give permission to become ordained, that the son is going to die. So therefore, they give him permission so that at least if he lives, they can at least see him, or else he would die. So that is the way Venerable Rattapala became ordained. So he had so much determination in his life. And therefore, he was the foremost monk among all monks who went forth out of confidence in the triple gem. Okay, so he was given the title of the foremost monk who went forth, that means who became ordained out of confidence, out of Shraddha, out of confidence in the triple gem, in the Supreme Buddha's dispensation. So he got ordained, and within no time, he was able to develop this Dhamma path, and he was able to become an arhat. So see, a young man who was living an ordinary world, who was living in an ordinary world filled with sensual pleasures, was able to become an arhat in a few days. How was that possible? It was possible because of the Dhamma. It was the Dhamma that transformed that person's life, nothing else. So that's why I said this Dhamma has such a strong power. It has the ability to transform a person's mind. Okay, so Venerable Rattapala, he became an Arhat. He became Arhat Rattapala. And then after some time, he got permission from his parents, and he went back to his hometown, Tullakottita. Okay, so by this time, so he came back to the hometown, and when he was going on the alms round, he also came to his own house. And when his father saw this monk who had come on the alms round, he of course didn't recognize him, and therefore he started to blame the entire Sangha for taking his son away. He didn't know that this is his son. So he's blaming the entire Sangha, these bald monks are the ones who took my son away from me. So saying such harsh words, he was blaming. and he never got any alms food from that house. So therefore he continued on. And one of the servants there, he saw one of the servants there, she saw Venerable Rattapala, and she had gone out from the gate to throw away some spoiled food. And so when Venerable Rattapala saw that she was throwing away some spoiled food, she asked her, if you don't want it, you can put it into my alms bowl. So that servant put that food into her alms bowl, into his alms bowl, and at that moment she recognized that this is very this monk is very similar to my Lord's son. So she recognized him, and so she quickly went back and told the father.
दीपा तो जीविंग में जाएगी ना, तो ये सब्जी रख.
She told the owner of the house, his father, that Venerable Rattapal has returned. And the father quickly went out to see him. And by that time, Venerable Rattapal was eating that spoiled food. So can you imagine a rich person who was eating very delicious food after becoming a monk, after becoming an arhat, is able to even eat spoiled food? Why? Because they know the meaning of eating. You eat just to sustain this body, not to find taste, not to embellish this body, or not to make this body look good, just to sustain this body as a nourishment. So his father invited him to come to alms the next day. And so he came to the alms the next day he came to take alms from the house. And the father, what he did is he piled up all his wealth in the middle of the house and covered it. And when Venerable Rattapala came inside the house, he opened up all the wealth and he said, this is your wealth. This belongs to you. So why don't you disrobe and stay and live a homely life? So even after becoming a monk, he's being he's being influenced to live a homely life. But would that ever happen? No, because he's already an arhat. He has completely let go of all defilements. And so at that time, he had alms at his house, at his father's house, and then he taught the Dhamma to those in the house. And at that moment, he described how futile this body is. So the Dhamma that he teaches his father, mother, and his old wives is very beautiful. He says, see this fancy puppet. It's a body built of sores, diseased, obsessed over in which nothing lasts at all. They see this fancy figure with its gems and earrings, its bones encased in skin, made pretty by its clothes. And he says, robed feet and powdered face may be enough to beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the far shore. So he's showing how, in the external world, people beautify this body and try to fool us. But really, if a person looks into the reality of this body, he realizes, this is filled with filth. But the ordinary person, he's fooled by this body. That foolishness or that delusion is what makes us become attached to this body. But if a person really sees the reality of this body, he does not become attached to this. He says, hair in 8 braids and eyeshadow may be enough to beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the far shore. A rotting body all adorned like a freshly painted makeup box may be enough to beguile a fool, but not a seeker of the far shore. So he shows really how the ordinary person is fooled by this body that is so embellished with clothes and makeup and all the other things. The hunter laid his snare, but the deer didn't spring the trap. I've eaten the bait and now I go, leaving the trapper to lament. Okay, so these sensual pleasures are like a trap, and most people gets caught into this trap of sensual pleasures. That's why they can't get out of it. However, the wise person realizes the danger of these sensual pleasures and therefore he lets go and he go in the path to Nibbana. So these are the verses that he taught his father, his mother, and his wives in the lay life. And then he continued to go and rest in the royal park. Okay, so this is where we come to one of the most important parts of the sutta. So I kind of, as I mentioned before, I'm kind of summarizing this. So at that time, the king at that time was named King Koravya. So Venerable Rattapala, he went into the royal park and he was resting there. That means he was meditating there. And the king got to know that Venerable Rattapala, of course, the king knew about Venerable Rattapala's ordination because he was a very famous person in town, because he was one of the richest people in town. So the king knew about him. So when the king got to know that Venerable Rattapala has returned to the park, he was very excited to go and talk to him. So he quickly went to the royal park, and he offered his elephant rug for Arhan Rattapala to sit on. And of course, Arhan Rattapala said, I'm sitting already. I don't need anything else. You can sit on this rug. And at that time, the king, he asked Rattapala, Venerable Rattapala or Arhan Rattapala, Master Rattapala, there are these there are these four losses in life in which people become ordained. So he's saying that when people face these losses in life, that is the reason that people become ordained. That was the idea at the time. That if a person leaves the lay life and if he becomes ordained, that's because that person has lost something. And what are those four things? Either he has lost his Either he has lost his youth, that means he has grown old. So once a person grows old, once he's not able to make a living on his own, then it was the idea that then at that time, when in your old age you become ordained. Okay, and then he says, people become ordained when they're sick. When they're sick, when they can't, make a living on their own, they become ordained so that they can go begging for food and make a living. So that was the idea at the time. This is the reason that people become ordained, because they didn't understand the true meaning of what ordination is. And then he says, some people ordain because they lose their wealth. So sometimes for one reason or another, if a person loses his spell that he had, then that person also becomes ordained and make a living by going begging for food. Or some people become ordained when they lose their relatives. For example, if a person, due to a very contagious disease, some people lose their entire family. So in such cases, when you become lonely, you become ordained because you don't have anyone. So that was the idea at the time, that a person becomes ordained because of these reasons. So now the king is asking, you have not faced any of these causes. You have not lost, you're still in your youth, you have not grown old, and you have not lost your wealth, and you have not got sick. You have not gotten sick, and you have not lost your relatives. Your parents are still there. They love you. Your wives are still there. So the king is asking you, why in the world did you become ordained? Because the king does not understand the true meaning of ordination. So in answer to this, Venerable Arhant Rattapala really gives a beautiful exposition of Dhamma. Now this is what I really wanted to focus on. Okay. So in answer to this, Venerable Rattapala says, Great King, the Blessed One who knows and sees, the Perfected One, the fully awakened One, taught me these 4 summaries of Dhamma. And it was after knowing and seeing and understanding these 4 summaries of Dhamma that I decided to leave the homely life and become ordained. So he's telling the king that Dhamma that he heard on that day when the Supreme Buddha first arrived at Tullakotita and taught the Dhamma that the Supreme Buddha taught. So when he listened to that Dhamma, there was a transformation in his mind. And that transformation is what made him renounce the household life. That transformation is what allowed him to let go all of that wealth. Okay, so let's see what those 4 expositions of Dhamma is. The Supreme Buddha teaches. The first one is Supreme Buddha teaches Upaniyati Loko Adduvo. That's the Pali. Upaniyati Loko Addu, and what that means is this world, or rather this life, in this life, everybody is aging. And at the end, this life ends with death. Dear King, when the Supreme Buddha taught this, I realized this. Okay, that's the first one. The second one is Attano Loko Anabhisaram, and what that means is, although we think that this world is what brings us comfort, this world can, this world can give us happiness. Although we think that this world can make us free from suffering, this world cannot. The Supreme Buddha taught that Dhamma exposition, and I understood it. Okay. There is no savior in this world for us. Although we think that this world can save us, there's really no protector in this world who can actually protect us, who can actually give us solace in life. Okay, that's the second one. And the third one is Asako Loko Sabbam Pahaya Gamaniyam. The world has no owner, which we can, although we say that this is mine, that's mine, she's mine, he's mine, the Supreme Buddha teaches one day we will all have to leave all of these things that we call mine and go on our own. We'll have to let go of everything and go on our own. That's the third Dhamma exposition that the Supreme Buddha taught, which I understood, which made me renounce the household life. The third one. And the fourth one is Uno Loko Atito Tanha Daso. Supreme Buddha teaches, this world is a slave of craving. People are never satisfied. This world, people, they are always unsatisfied. They are never satisfied with what they have. They always want more. So when I heard this, people are a slave for craving. When I heard this, I understood it. So he realized these 4 Dhamma expositions on his own. And after realizing this, he says, so these are the 4 Dhamma points the Supreme Buddha taught me, which made me renounce. And Arhan Rattapala explains further what these four means to the king, because the king cannot understand these four by just simply saying it in a statement. So the king asks, Venerable Rattapala says, this world is unstable and swept away by aging and ends up in death. What does this mean? Okay. And okay, so the king is asking, you know, the first one you said is this world is Upaniyatilokoaddo, this world is unstable and it's swept away, meaning that this in this world, people's lives are always changing. Every moment, people are aging. And at the end, it's swept away by death. Venerable Rattapala, you said this. How should I understand this? What is the meaning of this? So the king is asking from Venerable Rattapala. And Venerable Rattapala replies saying, King, dear king, what do you think, great king, when you were 20 or 25 years of age, were you proficient at riding elephants, horses, and chariots, and at archery and swordmanship? So now Venerable Rattapala is asking about the king's youth. When you were young, you know, were you good at these things? And were you strong in thigh and arm, capable and battle hardened? You know, when you were young, weren't you very strong? Weren't you very youthful and so strong and powerful? And when this was asked, the king replied, Master Rattapala, yes, I was. So I was so powerful that sometimes I felt as if I had superpowers. I don't see anyone who could have equaled me in strength. So that's how strong he was when he was in his youth. And so Venerable Rattapala is asking, what do you think, great king? These days, are you just as strong as you used to be? Are you just as skilled in those archery and elephant riding and swordmanship as you used to be? And so the king says, no, Master Rattapala, now I'm old. I'm elderly. I'm a senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of my life. I'm 80 years old. Sometimes sometimes I intend to step in one place, but my foot goes somewhere else. That's how frail and weak he is. And so Arhan Rattapala says that this is what the Buddha was referring to when the Supreme Buddha said that this life is unstable. It's not going to stay in the same way forever. It's going to change. It's being swept away by old age, sickness, and is swept away and reaches death at the end. So he understood this Dhamma exposition in detail when he heard it because he had wisdom and he started to think, you know, how true it's so true. Everybody's all, you know, now you can relate it to yourself and see when you were young, you know, how powerful you were, how strong you were, how able you were, right? But now do you still have that ability, or do you have a lot of sicknesses? You know, when you sit down, sometimes you can't even get up. Okay, so for a person to understand this is the reality of this life that we live, that we love so much, you don't necessarily have to grow old. A young person can understand it because that's where Venerable Rattapali understood this when he's in his youth. He was a young man when he understood actually this is the reality of life. So understanding this reality, he decided to leave these sensual pleasures and go after finding liberation from this. Because this is the same thing again and again. If we are born, we have to age, we have to face sicknesses, and then we have to die, and then again reborn again. No matter in which world, even as an animal, in the animal world, in the human world, even in the deva world, this suffering is always there. So a person really understand this reality. That person understand the futility of holding on to these things, and therefore let go. That's the transformation that happens in a person's mind when he listens to the Dhamma. When a person gets to listen to listen about aging and death, that person relates it into his life, and he realizes this is the reality. That's the reason that he's able to let go of everything and go in search of liberation. Okay? And then the king is asking, and whenever Rattapala explained this, the king was very happy. He said, "It's incredible, Master Rattapala. It's amazing how well said this was by the Buddha." So he agreed with it. So the king is also a wise person. And then he's asking the second question. He's asking, you said that there is no protector in this world that can save us, that this external world cannot give us comfort. What is the meaning of that? You know, what is the meaning of that? There's elephants and cavalry and chariots and infantry. They help to defend us. They help to save us from threats. So why are you saying that the external world cannot save us? So he's asking this question. And at that time, Rattapala says, "What do you think, great king? Do you have any chronic ailment? That means do you have very a special a disease or disease that always surfaces in your life?" And so he says, "Yes, I do. Um, Sometimes when I'm sick, my friends and colleagues and relatives and family members surround me, thinking, now the king will die, now the king will die." That's how seriously ill he gets. And when he says this, Rattapala asks, "What do you think, great king? Can you get your friends and colleagues, relatives and family members to help and ask them to take your pain away when you're suffering from such a powerful, intense pain? When you're in pain, when you're suffering from your ailment, although all your friends and family are around you, can they take your pain away and give you comfort?" And the king says, "Venerable sir, no, they can't. At that moment, although everybody is around me, they can't take my pain away. I have to face it on my own." This is the same for us, right? Although we have a family, although we have friends, although we have acquaintances, although we have many people around us, when we fall sick and when we are suffering, they can't take that suffering away from us and they can't give us comfort, right? But this world think that we can find comfort from these external people around us, right? The king says, "I can't get my friends or my family to share my pain. Rather, I should, alone, on my own, face that suffering." And Rattapala says, this is what the Buddha said by saying that this world cannot provide any shelter or this world cannot save us. And so the king understood. The king understood what that meant, and he says, "Incredible, Venerable Rattapal. It's amazing how well this was said by the Buddha. So he understood. It is the second. So this is the same for us. Although we, sometimes we spend our entire life, you know, um, want we spend our entire life for our family, trying to make a family, trying to be with the family, and trying to um, make friends because thinking that they are the ones who are always there to support us. But in reality, when we are actually facing a serious illness, when we are actually unprotected, they cannot do anything for us. They cannot take that pain away from us, and they cannot make us, they cannot take the suffering from us. We are the ones at the end who will have to face the suffering on our own. So we have to realize this. If a person does not realize this, then when that person is suffering, what happens is when that person is in pain, that person always points the finger out to others. You are not there for me, you are not here for me, you are not doing this for me. Why? Because that person is always depending on the external world to protect that person. But there's only a certain protection that we can get from the world. There's no real protection. We ourselves have to face our own suffering. They can't take that suffering away from us. So a person understands this reality, and that person is able to let go of things much easily. So wherever Rattapala understood this reality, that at the end, although he has so many servants, although he has so a great retinue of family, he has so many wives around him, once I fall sick, I have to face the pain on my own. Nobody's going to take it away from me. I am the one who will have to suffer. And that's the reason that he decided to find a way to become free from this suffering. And therefore, he let go of the household life and became ordained. Yes, that was done because of that. The transformation that occurred in his mind after hearing the Dhamma and after realizing the Dhamma that he heard. That's what realization means. Okay, it changes your life. It makes a change in your life. And then the king is asking the third. Is asking, so the third one is Asako Loko Sabbam Pahaya Gamaniya. That means, all of these things that we call mind, we'll have to one day let go all of it and go on our own. So it's asking, what is the meaning of it? Why are you saying that? Why are you saying we have to let go of all of these things? In this royal court, there's a lot of gold and there's a lot of wealth. Yet you say that we are not the owner of it. You're saying we must leave all of it behind and pass on. How should I understand this? And so, Venerable Rattapal is asking, what do you think, great king? These days you amuse yourself and you enjoy yourself with the sensual pleasures. But is there any way that you can take these things that are amusing you into your next life? So as a king, there are dancers and there are singers and there's a lot of wealth. There are so many things that please a king. So Venerable Rattapal is asking, you're the owner of this wealth, you're the owner of these people who are entertaining you. But when you leave this world, can you take them with you? Or will you have to leave all of this property here, and will you have to leave all of this here, and won't you have to go on your own? Okay, now when this was asked like this, the king says, Venerable sir, there's no way that I can take these things with me. When I have to leave this world, then I'll have to pass on my own, according to my own deeds. I won't be able to take all of these with me. this Venerable Arahant Arahant Rattapala says, this is what the Buddha said when the Supreme Buddha said that the world has no owner. We don't own these things. We must leave it all behind and pass on. Right? So like people in this world, they spend their entire life earning money, building houses and buying property for themselves. But all of these things only give them pleasure for a very short time. At the end, when our life is finished, when our lifespan is finished, we'll have to leave all of these things here and go on our own without a cent, without carrying a single dollar with us. Right? People who own billions of money, when they die, do they take those billions with them? No, but they spend their entire life trying to collect that money. But when they leave here, they leave all alone. They don't take even a single dollar. They don't take their mansions with them. They leave everything here and has to go on. Right? We will all have to let go of all of these things one day. If a person understands this, then that person is able to let go quickly without becoming so attached and without becoming so attached to things. Okay, the reason people are so strongly attached, strongly bonded to people is because they don't realize this reality. Once a person realizes this reality, he's quickly able to let go. Why am I holding on to these things? You know, it's only there for a very short time. I'll have to anyway let go all of these things. So if a person is very wise, that person lets go in this very moment and goes in search of liberation. Because in every life, this is the same story, right? If you look into this samsara, if you look back into samsara, you know, we have become billionaires in many lives. We have become kings and queens in many lives. We have become very rich, noble people in many lives. But where is that now, right? It's nowhere to be found. So when a person realizes this, he sees the futility of, you know, this collecting and accumulating wealth, and he tries to search a way out of this. So this is what happens in the mind of Venerable Rattapala when he was a lay person. He realized futility. He realized the futility of this. You know, we spend the entire life holding on to things, saying me, mine, I, and at the end we leave all of these things and have to go. So what's the point of this? Once a person realizes this, he lets go of everything and he searches, he goes in the path to liberation, finding liberation. Okay, so that is the third point of Dhamma that changed Venerable Rattapala's mind when he was a layperson. That's the reason he decided to renounce. And then the king asks the fourth question, which is, you said uno loko atitto tanha dasa. You said that this world is never satisfied with what they have. Okay. You said this world is insatiable. It's a slave of craving. You know, how should I understand this? So in order for the king to understand this, Venerable Rattapala asks, what do you think, great king? Do you dwell in this prosperous land of Kuru? You know, you're living in a very prosperous, great land of Kuru, so you're the owner of it, right? So the king says, yes, indeed, I do. What do you think, great king? If a very trustworthy person comes and tells you that from the east there's a I'm coming from the east, and there I saw a country that is very successful and prosperous and populous, full of people, and they have many divisions of elephants, cavalry. So it's a very successful and prosperous city, and there's plenty of money and plenty of gold coins there. With your current forces, you can conquer it, and you can gain that kingdom. If a person comes and tells you this, what would you do? And the king says, if a person comes and says that in the east there's another great country, and with my force, with my force that I can conquer it, then I would definitely conquer it. I will definitely go with my force, and I will try to win it. And then again, wherever Rattapal is asking, suppose this person from the west comes and tells you, in the west also there's a very prosperous country. You can conquer it with your forces. Then what would you do? The king says, then I would take that kingdom too. So in this way, wherever Rattapal says from the north, someone comes and tells you, from the south someone comes and tells you about a prosperous land, what would you do? And he said, well, if they come and tell me such a thing, then I would conquer those countries as well. And whenever Rattapala says, this is what the Buddha was referring to when the Supreme Buddha said that this world is never satisfied. Now, this king has a great kingdom, but when he hears about another kingdom, he wants that kingdom too. When he hears about another kingdom, he wants that kingdom too. He's never satisfied. That's the nature of this mind. That's the nature of the ordinary person's mind. If he has a certain amount of wealth, if he is given more wealth, he would happily take it. Right? Suppose you have one house, okay, and if you have the opportunity to take another house, you will definitely take that house as well. Suppose you have lands. If you hear about another land that you can buy, you would go and buy that. Suppose you have clothes. If you see another beautiful dress or a nice pair of clothing, you'd go and buy that as well. Because this mind always wants more, is never satisfied. Why? Because this mind, the ordinary person's mind, is a slave of craving. The craving, we are a slave to craving. Craving is what controls us. Okay, I saw this reality of this mind. I saw this reality, and that is the reason I realized that people are never satisfied. People always want more and more and more. And that's the reason I understood this reality, and that's the reason I let go all of that. And I wanted to go in search of liberation. So he explained beautifully those four Dhamma expositions, which he understood, which made his mind which made him transform and make him become ordained in the Buddha's dispensation. Okay. And when he said this, the king was amazed and again said, Venerable, so it's incredible. Master Rattapala, and the king was very satisfied and happy about the answer that he got, because the king thought that people become ordained because they have lost relatives, they have lost wealth, they have become old, and they have gotten sick. But then he realized that this is not the reason that Buddha's disciples become ordained. They become ordained by realizing the futility of this life, and therefore wants to find a way to become free from this. Okay. And at the end, whenever Rattapala explained in a summary, some beautiful verses which completely summarizes this world. So wherever Rattapala says, I see rich people in the world who, because of delusion, do not give. So although they are rich, they do not give. Why? Because of delusion. So delusion makes us not give. Greedily, they hold on to their riches and longing for sensual pleasures. A king who conquered the earth by force, ruling the land from sea to sea, is still unsatisfied. If he gets to hear about another kingdom in the next shore, he would go and try to conquer that kingdom as well. Not just the king, but others too reach death not rid of craving. So people die not being satisfied with things that they crave. They leave the body still wanting, for in this world sensual pleasures never satisfy. When people die, they die unsatisfied. I couldn't do that, I couldn't go there, I couldn't eat that, I couldn't be like this. In their mind, they're still unsatisfied. That's the nature of sensual pleasures. And whenever Rattapala says, and when they die, relatives lament, relatives cry, and with their hair all messy, and they're crying and say, "Oh no, may my relatives not die, may they be immortal." They cry like that, and at the end, they wrap the body and they put it into the fire and they burn it. Okay, and that person who died all alone, all alone, he's dying, he's being burned in the funeral pyre with just a single cloth around him, all his wealth gone. So this is the reality that happens to all of us. And relatives, friends, and companions can't help you when you're all alone burning in a pyre. Okay? And Venerable Rattapala further says, once you pass away, once you die, your heirs take your riches. So whoever is after you, your family, your children, whoever is there, they are the ones who use your wealth. You can't take the wealth that you earned to your next life. And he says, longevity isn't gained by riches. Having money can give you longevity, and having money cannot banish old age. Money can buy those things. Although people are so focused on, going after money, money cannot buy these two things that we want so much. For the wise say this life is short, it's perishable and not eternal. The rich and the poor die. The fool and the wise also has to die. But the fool lies stricken by their own folly, while the wise don't tremble at the face of death. Okay, if a person is the fool, that person trembles at death. That means he gets scared in face of death. But the wise person who understands the true reality, he does not tremble at death. And therefore, wisdom is the greatest wealth a person can gain in this world. Okay? Wisdom is the greatest wealth a person can gain in this world, because if a person has wisdom, money cannot buy immortality, money cannot buy longevity, money cannot stop us from aging. But if a person has wisdom, through that wisdom, that person is able to understand the Dhamma, and through understanding and realizing the Dhamma, that person is able to become free from aging, is able to become free from death, is able to become free from this samsara. That's why wisdom is the greatest wealth a person can gain in this world. See how beautiful these verses are. And he further says, one who enters the womb and the world beyond will transmigrate from one life to another, while someone of little wisdom, placing faith in them, also enters the womb in the world beyond. But if a person does not escape from this samsara, if he enters the womb again, then that person is continuing to go in this samsara. And going in this samsara is like being caught to a group of burglars. Now, suppose you're going on the road and you're caught by burglars, then you're hit and you're punched and you're hurt. In that same way, when you're going in this samsara, you're called to karma. Okay, if you have done evil deeds, if you have done bad deeds, then you're trapped by that karma and you have to suffer. Just like a group of burglars come and catch you and makes you suffer. That's the nature of this sansara, is what Venerable Rattapala is saying. People are punished for their own bad deeds. And he says, sensual pleasures are diverse, sweet, and delightful. Appearing in disguise, they disturb the mind. Okay? So although sensual pleasures seem so sweet, so delightful, and so enticing, these sensual pleasures, what it does is it disturbs the mind. That's why the Supreme Buddha teaches that if a person is living with sensual pleasures, that person's mind is not placid, that person's mind is not calm, it's always disturbed. Seeing the danger in sensual pleasures, I went forth, O king. So the wise person who understands the danger of sensual pleasures, which is a very difficult thing to see, that person lets go of sensual pleasures and becomes ordained. As fruit falls from a tree, so people fall, young and old, when the body breaks up. Okay? Just as fruit falls from a tree when it's completely ripe, in the same way, when people have reached old, when people's lifespan has ended, whether you're young or old, you have to go from this world. You have to let go. You have to leave this world. Seeing this too, O king, I went forth and became ordained, looking for liberation. Okay, so Venerable Sariputta at the end pretty much explains in these last verses the danger of sensual pleasures and how fooled and deluded people are in the ordinary world, and how through wisdom a person is able to change the path that he is taking and go in the path to liberation and become free from aging, become free from craving, and become free from sickness, and become free from this samsara and find true liberation, true happiness, and experience the bliss of Nibbana. So may this beautiful sutta help all of us to also develop the greatest wealth that we can develop and gain in this world, which is wisdom. And may all of us be able to realize the reality of this life and be able to let go of all our attachments and develop the Dhamma path and realize the Four Noble Truths and experience the liberation, the bliss of Nibbana in this Gautama Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So in this sutta, the Venerable Rattapala beautifully explains the transformation that goes through a person's mind when he hears the Dhamma, and how the Dhamma transforms and changes a person. Now, Venerable Rattapala was just an ordinary young man living a life filled with sensual pleasures. But listening to the Dhamma, listening to these four expositions of Dhamma made him change, made his life transformed and turned his life around and took him to Nibbana.